Good morning, welcome back to the shop here at Basin Motorsports. I'm Canaan. Today in this video, I'm going to make a new shifter boot for the manual transmission in my C5 or 5th generation Corvette. So to start with, we need to get the shifter boot out of the console. Now taking the console piece is pretty easy to take out. Obviously there's a couple bolts, a couple screws, and then you're going to take out your console. Now in order to get the boot out of the piece here, you're going to need to turn it over. There's going to be a plastic trim ring that's snapped in here. You're going to go ahead and push in each of these tabs on the sides, and then you're going to pop your plastic insert out with your shift boot. So now once you have your trim ring out, you're going to have your shifter boot. Now of course I've already taken this apart, but if I put it back together, you're going to have a shifter boot that sits over top your ring. Now on your ring itself, you're most likely going to have some glue. If it's aftermarket, you'll have it down behind these tabs, and you may have some staples in here that's holding your boot to your ring. Now this is just an ABS plastic, so it's kind of thin, kind of delicate. And remember, these are 20 to 25 years old, so be careful when you pull the staples that you don't damage this part. Now once you have your ring taken off, you can just set this aside, because we won't need it until we start putting things back together. Now for a boot itself, mine came as a single piece. So I just went ahead and split it because it's two colors, and that way you have basically a half circle, roughly that. Now I'm going to use this as a pattern in order to make a shift boot, a new one, out of the plaid material that I have been using for the Corvette, which is right here. And in order to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and lay this material down. Now, if you're going to do this in two parts, let's say two colors or etc., you're going to basically split this again. So then you would have two separate pieces that you would trace out as a pattern. Now, this pattern itself is pretty easy to go ahead and trace out. Just grab my bar stock that I have just to help lay the material down. And you want to make sure it's stretched out as well as possible so you get the full width of your material. Now after you do that, you can take your pen, mark it out all the way around. Now one of the things I didn't like about this shift boot is it sat below my shifter ball in there, and I'll show you when we get into it, but I really didn't like the way it sat. I felt like it sat too far below. You saw a good 1.5 inches of shaft down there, and I really wasn't excited by how that was. So I have extended this up. So I'm going to make this a little bit longer on this section here where my fingers are, so that it will then cover more of the shift handle, I guess you'd say. Basically the rod that bolts the transmission up to the shifter ball. I want to make that longer. Secondly, thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a little bit poofier. Now, there's a reason for this is that I'm not sure if I want to use just cloth or I want to put a foam backing on it to give it a little bit more structure. So I'm going to try it both ways, but I've added in here a little bit more sewing allowance. So I got a little bit, about a 1/2 inch here that I can sew it together, and that'll give me enough room, making this a little bit bigger, a little bit more around the circumference in order to fit. But I'm going to keep this where it attaches to the ring. I'm going to keep this the same shape. I'm not officially going to start by cutting out the little tabs because I want to see how these things fit the way they get in there. If I need to, I can come back and add these in. So basics here, trace it out, add the sewing allowance, add some extra length. Now I need to cut my plaid material out, and I'm going to pin it together rather than sew it because I don't know if I want to put foam or not. So I'm going to try them both ways, and we'll take you along for the ride. All right, so now that I have it cut out, I've flipped it over so I could just pin it from the outside just to kind of get a feel for it. I feel like it fits very well around this ring here. Now I just need to take it and I want to set it in the car to see how this actually feels and how it fits. I'm thinking it might be a little too long, which will make it bunched down here at the bottom, but I think maybe the cloth is going to work versus the foam, but we're going to find out. All right, so now I have the piece put it back in the car. I can tell you a couple things. One, putting foam behind it is absolutely not necessary because there's really not enough of the short shifter sticking up. So I have a B&M short shifter in here in the Corvette, and really there's not much sticking up. So putting in extra foam behind it to make it thicker doesn't really even matter. Secondly, adding in all that extra length, really, you can see I've got it folded over, is not going to matter. I think it fits very well. Otherwise, I've got it pinned at roughly where I need to sew it to. So just above that. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut off a little bit of length, fold it over so it's got a nice clean edge, sew it, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew that as it is before I attach the ring. So adding foam behind it, not needed. Just go ahead and put it together like it is. I think it's going to look really good. Now, after getting everything test fit and sewn together, I went ahead and connected the shift boot down to the plastic ring, or the retainer ring as it's called. Now, I went ahead and glued it. There are no staples in it, and I just left it overnight, so you can kind of see some glue that came out the bottom there. These are just some 2-inch clamps. They held the material on there, and now it's ready to go back into the shifter, or I guess really the console bezel, and then get back in the car. Now, with it all put back together, you can kind of get a zoom out here of all the plaid pieces, but there's the shift boot. Now, it is a little shorter than I originally intended, but it's better than the previous one that I had in there. So maybe something I work on in the future, make that shaft a little longer to get up towards the ball. But until then, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Looks pretty good compared to all the other plaid in the car. So finishing up the boot is the last of the big pieces for the Corvette this year. If you're interested in a shift boot and you can't find something online that you'd like, or you want something custom, contact me. Maybe I can make you one for your Corvette. Now, if you have any questions on any of the materials or any of the equipment that I used to make this shift boot, go ahead and check the video description. I'll have links out there so you can kind of see what I use here in the shop for basic upholstery needs. And if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and drop them down in the comment field below. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if anyone's looking for how to make a boot, share this video with them. That's it for this time from Basin Motorsports. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time.